Well, hello everybody. Good morning here today. On a For those of you out there wondering what the hell are these guys doing podcasting so early, tune in to Game Gone Wrong. You'll understand exactly why we are doing this at this time of the day. There he is. PC Tunney's here today too. Welcome into this edition of Unidentified History. We were going to do this yesterday. Um, we shifted our focus to the House of the Dragon season 1 and 2 recap over on the Game Gone Wrong side of things, and we are here today though. And this is going to be another stacked episode of Unidentified History because that seems to be all that's happening in the world of UAPs right now. Before we get into anything that we're doing here today, want to welcome in and thank him for showing up on the show. The man whose arm I twisted to go see Disclosure Day, and who came through like a champ. Tony, how you doing, buddy?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm glad we're here doing this. It's been a while. I think maybe not too long since I've been on, but you've been doing a lot of great solo work and getting the word out here on Unidentified History. So I'm glad to be back. And yeah, folks, if you're any type of fan of Dragons or Game Gone Wrong or Game of Thrones universe, listen to what we did last night. And ladies or even gentlemen, if you want to see a really sexy DJ with his shirt off, go ahead and check that out last night too, right, Dave?
Yeah, that is he is living the gimmick, and it is a great gimmick because yeah, DJ is shirtless.
He looks good. He's put on some weight and done some really good things since his surgery. So yeah, he's had a pretty
Yeah,
good journey.
no, he's ripped. I mean, he's like, I wish I looked half as good as DJ did. So if I looked that good, I'd be shirtless too. Instead, I'm just wearing my contact shirt I got from Contact in the Desert, which was one of the nicer ones. See,
Oh, that's nice. Oh, that looks like the possible disclosure day.
it kind of does, and we're going to get into that. So let's kind of run through what we're doing here on this episode of Unidentified History today. Because yeah, Tony, you were with me on when we did the UFO file drops that the Department of War set down, the first two that came down, and we talked a lot about that. Then there was like stuff developing, and I actually had to come back on and do a solo thing to kind of clarify some stuff that was going on with the second file drop, and ever since then, there was Contact in the Desert, and there's all this other stuff going on. But here today, what we're looking at doing today is we are going to cover. To me, this is like these episodes of Unidentified History are like, remember back in the old days, it had This Week in Baseball, or Inside the NFL. They had
Vince
these,
Scully.
yeah, you had these big recaps of everything that would happen from one week to the next. And that's kind of what this is. There's a lot of ground we're going to cover here today. But we're going to talk about a lot of cool things and get into this. So, some of the highlights of what we're going to do today, just so you guys know in advance, especially one that I want to warn everybody in advance because it's going to be important if you have not yet seen Disclosure Day. I'm trying to pull up my channel and make sure we're doing.
We're good.
Yeah, we're good. We are good. Yeah, yeah. See, just talking like Ben Riley now. So what we're going to do here is we're going to kick this off. We're going to talk about the June 9th press event that happened on the steps of the Capitol, with David Grusch, who came out there and made a big splash with a lot of things that he said. We've got some governmental people we'll talk to. We're not going to do a full, regurgitation of the 35-minute conference, just the highlights of that. We're going to look at the third UFO file drop, which I initially thought was a big old nothing burger. And then the more you dig into it, there's some really interesting stuff there. Not video wise. The videos there's like one that's kind of consequential, and the rest are like whatever. But there are some very interesting documents in that third file drop that kind of flew under the radar a little bit. From there, Tunney and I will review Disclosure Day. Now, this is very important, kids. This will not be spoiler free. Disclosure Day's been out for a week now. It's probably been spoiled all over the place. Some people love it, some people hate it. The interesting thing is that Tunney has not told me how he feels about it yet. We're going to get his first impression here, and I'm going to reveal something to you right now, Tunney, that I have not revealed before. I went and saw it a second time Thursday night after we did Mindless Wrestling's 300th episode. I went there because I wanted to watch it again with kind of like a different lens, and I'll talk about that on this episode. So we will review Disclosure Day. It will not be spoiler free. If you don't want the movie spoiled, then I would say tune out for about 30 minutes, 20, 30 minutes, that sort of thing. And then you can come back on. We are going to touch bases on Dylan Borlan, whistleblower Dylan Borlan, who, one of my favorite people to engage with. He made a kind of a surprise appearance on Doomer Friday a week ago and said a lot of cool things. We're going to cover some of the stuff that he talked about. It's like his first podcast appearance that's not named Weaponized. And he had definitely some spicy things to discuss there, and some things that we'll talk about that I'm not going to show the video of because, go watch it yourself would be my recommendation to you. Um, there is David Grusch came back and he did something on Fox News where he really kind of got into detail as to some of the stuff he's seen, which was very enlightening. And we've also got a scientific advisory board and a governing board that has just been created this week, that kind of came out of nowhere. I've got my concerns about what the real purpose of this thing is, and we'll talk about that. And then I do have a documentary that I reviewed, that I think I mentioned last time I was going to review it and talk about it a little bit on this episode. But anyway, so lots of stuff to cover, but let's get into it, Tony, and let's start off by looking at the June 9th press conference that took place on the steps of the Capitol, where we had, it was very bipartisan. You had a lot of the people we're familiar with, Representative Eric Burleson, who we know very well, Anna Paulina Luna, who's been at the forefront, Tim Burchett, who said "dadgummit" at least 4 or 5 times as he was on the steps, and it's beautiful when he does that. But you had like Scott Perry, who was there, Jared Moskowitz. So I've got a little bit clip from what he said, and of course the star of the show was David Grusch, and the things that he said are very kind of enlightening. So we're going to get into that. I'm going to share that here. We're going to check that out. We're going to start off this whole episode watching that, and if I can pull it up here, which come on now, it's trying to pull up. There we go. Good. All right. So let us get into this thing, and we'll listen to what this is. We'll talk. This will be Eric Burleson's statement, and then Jared Moskowitz's statement, and then we'll kind of go from there. So, can I still find my windows here?
I,
Riverside,
I
gotta
believe,
love
Dave. I believe in you.
it. It's actually in the same space. They didn't mess that part up, so that's good to know. Yeah, that's real. All right. Let's take a look at this thing.
Continue to receive credible claims of recovered craft and reverse engineering programs that may have operated for decades outside of any oversight. Those claims point to specific facilities, contractors, records, and people. Congress has a constitutional duty to follow them, and that duty does not vanish because someone stamped a document classified 30 years ago. It does not vanish because some bureaucrat says so. It does not vanish because a program has become so compartmentalized that even elected officials are expected to look the other way. The Constitution gave Congress oversight, authority for a reason. No elected bureaucrat has that authority. This information is not yours to keep. It belongs to the American people. They own it and they deserve the truth. The most important people in this story are the whistleblowers: David Grusch, Admiral Gallaudet, Dylan Borland, Jeff Nusatelli, and the many others who haven't been named yet. Their careers were upended. Their families were torn apart. They endured an avalanche of stress, all because they believed this information belongs to you, the American people, and they attempted to and tried to get it to you. Some will say they should have used more proper channels. To hell with the safe way. The safe way protects the system. These are people who simply wanted the American people to see what they know, and they deserve protection. They deserve our respect, and they deserve a second chance. And we are at a different time. This is the age of disclosure. Mr. President, I'm asking you directly, waive the non-disclosure agreements that still bind these patriots. Grant immunity to anyone and everyone who has already come forward and everyone who will come forward. Open the door and let them speak. Because unless people know they will be protected, why would they come forward and step forward otherwise? It is time that we flip the script entirely as well. It has been said by people in positions that know that even presidents have been kept on a need to know basis, that Navy pilots, admirals, and generals describe programs to senior officials that commander in chiefs were never briefed on, career bureaucrats who view presidents as temporary help, here today, gone tomorrow. That is not classification, that's a constitutional crisis. Transparency must be the default in the United States of America, and it should be required for those with knowledge to come forward, not wait for us to ask. There must be real penalties for officials who knowingly withhold information from Congress. Playing dumb is no longer acceptable. Hiding behind classification is no longer acceptable. Mr. President, you know that the agencies lie. You know that firsthand. They have lied to you. They have lied about you. They do not cooperate easily, and they never have. This is the moment. Use the authority that you have, Mr. President. The American people are behind you. And to everyone listening today in government, working for a contractor, retired, anywhere in the world, come to Congress. Come to these group of people. We will work with you. This is a worldwide call for action. And what you know and help us please release every record, every file, and every piece of information. The time is now. Thank you. And with that, I'll yield to
Reid, and then Marco Rubio and Chuck Schumer, and now my colleagues and many others in the House. But one of the things that changed is the quality and the caliber of people who are coming forward who have served our military, decorated people with the experience, airline pilots, and the technology in our hands, and the technology that our military has. That's what's changed. And what's also changed is we started asking questions, very simple questions. And this is what got me interested in the topic. We would ask questions, and they would then push back. And we would ask more questions, and the pushback became more significant. We would try to put language in an amendment, in a bill, and they would oppose it. They would secretly go to the chairman of committees to strip that language out. And that became clear to us that they were hiding something. And so, listen, I don't know what the full truth is, but I know we're being lied to. And the American people know that also. And so, look, the time for disclosure is now. Disclosure today, disclosure tomorrow. The American people have a right to know. We know about these advanced technology programs. We know they come out of Area 51. They did when we went to kill Osama bin Laden with an advanced technology helicopter that Congress never funded. There's trillions of dollars missing at the Pentagon.
So obviously, Tony, I've seen that a few times since it happened, and a lot of that, and I want to get your thoughts on that, because a lot of that, and this is the reason, the real reason, one of the big reasons I wanted you on this episode is because you and I had covered the Age of Disclosure documentary, and everything that's going on is so tied into a lot of stuff that we heard in that documentary. President's temporary people, they don't have a right to know because they're only here for 4 or 8 years at the most, right? And you know, but at the same time, you've got, you know, Representative Burleson calling for, you know, and this all, because this is June 9th. So this is a few days before Disclosure Day drops. And it's almost like they saw an advanced screening of this thing. So they're trying to get the real information out there because they know that what's been released so far, some of it is interesting, not very compelling in a lot of places. But, you know, I think Rep Burleson calling on a constitutional crisis, because you do have these agencies, you know, created through the, you know, National Security Act, the CIA, and that sort of thing. Like, remember a couple of weeks ago, we did when we covered the first drop in that video I shared with you and DJ about Erdman, the CIA whistleblower who came out and said all this stuff that they were spying on their own people. We need to reinstate the church committee, all that sort of stuff. And, you know, the CIA's response to all that wasn't any sort of denial that it happened. It's just like, he didn't have the right to say that. In Congress, you didn't have the right to receive that. So when Burleson talks about a constitutional crisis, you're in this sort of situation where, well, who's really got the power? I mean, if you're saying that Congress can't receive this information, they're one of the 3 branches created by the Constitution, as opposed to somebody created through a legislative act 200 years later, that sort of thing. So I wanted to go to you first before we get to Grusch, because that's, of course, what everybody was tuning in for. Your thoughts on what you heard from Rep Burleson. And Moskowitz was short and to the point. You know, we don't know what the truth is. We know we're being lied to.
So I want to start by taking a slight contrarian stance and talk about where the slippery slope lies, right? We say, like, this information belongs to the people, okay? Well, the government is elected by the people and sets standards so that it's able to protect the people, right? And we talk about whistleblowers being given immunity to come forward and give their information, okay? Now, in business, a lot of times in interviews, I'll get asked the question, being interviewed for like a leadership position, do you treat everyone the same or equally, And I said, no, that's not fair because not everybody is the same, right? So take this with a grain of salt with what I'm about to say, because this could be a situation where this is something that's different that should be completely treated differently. But if we just allow anybody in any sector of the government of information to go ahead and whistleblow on whatever they feel is wrong, whether or not it's right or wrong in the general consensus, what type of slippery slope are we? Do you get where I'm going with this?
Right. Well, right. And there's a certain element of that will come up later on, especially when we get to what Dylan was talking about and some
Sure.
of these the questions going into why is nobody talking about this?
Right.
That sort of thing. Why is it just like none of the other nations are talking about it, other countries, that sort of thing. But I get what you're saying. It's like you can't just there is a balance in play here with national security, and the whole idea of what can you disclose. Now, I think they hide behind national security a lot, and they just say everything's national security because as long as it's national security, then they do have that oversight.
Now, to kind of actually comment on what was being said there, right? Just to give everybody like where I stand, right? Yeah, don't lie to the people, okay? And to be honest with you, I feel like you have the best possible president out of all the presidents we've had in this country's history to get as much disclosure as you've ever gotten before. I don't think there's any president in the past other than Trump that is just because he's almost he's he's Teflon in a way in himself where he just nothing really affects him. Do you know what I'm saying? He's like,
Right.
oh, you want more information? Here's more information. You know what I mean? Like you want it. This is he's for he's for what is in his ear most of the time, from what I can see. So I don't know. Let's just all get on the same page. I think is what everybody's really looking for. Everybody's kind of talking out of both sides of their mouth right now on the side of that's withholding information.
Right. And I mean, I get it. They're, they want to release the good stuff, the really good information, and get that information out there because, and we're going to talk about that when we get to Disclosure Day and how that all this stuff ties together. Interestingly enough, but yeah, I get what they're saying, and I do agree with you to a certain point that Trump is one of these presidents because he doesn't really believe in all this stuff. He doesn't know what to make of it. He knows now that there's a tremendous amount of interest in it because 1.7 billion people have hit that site. And that's probably going to go up. So he knows that he's seen the numbers for Disclosure Day. He knows there's a lot of interest. He knows that there's something that they can't explain going on. So, is he more inclined to say, yeah, let's release this stuff? And I'm not gonna comment on it. I'm just gonna put it out there, you guys. And a lot of the drops, the 3 drops have been a lot of that. It's like, go figure it out yourself, which I'm okay with. At first I was like, well, you're not going to tell us anything. And like, no, you guys figure it out for yourself. Let's move into the David Grusch aspect of things because that got everybody talking, and that was the important part of this. And some of the stuff that Dave had to say about this is very enlightening and concerning in a lot of ways as well. So let me get his stuff pulled up here, and there we go. Okay, hold on. Share. Yeah, I'm almost getting good at this, Tony. Almost, but not quite.
Good enough to be dangerous.
I know. Isn't that fun? All right, here we go.
Serious homeland security and airspace safety issues. There are relevant counterintelligence and technology protection issues that must be taken into consideration. For decades, unknown objects have freely operated in restricted airspace in large metropolitan areas and critical infrastructure, and the agencies responsible for securing the homeland cannot adequately defend against it. This is a serious national security issue. In my official duties, I was exposed to human and signals intelligence information concerning foreign adversary, UAP crash retrieval, exploitation and study efforts, adversary views on U.S. legacy program reverse engineering efforts, and U.S.-held audiovisual information related to crash retrieval matters, such as the recovered vehicles and the associated biological material. One must always be concerned about adversarial disinformation when you're getting foreign intelligence, but I was able to cross-verify this information internally to back up the foreign government assertions. Many of the president's team has been kept in the dark by high-ego, politically appointed actors, both because of incompetence and malicious intent, has subverted the president's order on this issue. Furthermore, some of this foreign intelligence has not been provided to Congress, despite lawful requests to the Defense Intelligence Agency last summer, and also having formally been published across the IC and analyzed by such analytical centers such as NASIC. These records belong under congressional oversight, and I believe DIA should stop obstructing Chairwoman Luna's task force and provide those documents to Congress and enter it through mandatory declassification review so the American public can see some of the foreign intelligence I had access to. Secrecy around this issue did not appear overnight. Subsequent executive orders, Secretary of Defense memorandums, compartmented security, basically nullified Congress's role with the judicial branch with oversight of this issue. Remember, classification exists to protect the nation. Executive Order 13526 discusses what can and cannot be classified. Embarrassment, hiding funds, criminal activity, and the basic information about scientific information in the universe is unlawful for it to be classified. And this is why whistleblower protections matter. Through my federal litigation ongoing with the Department of War, I learned that the Air Force worked with an external agency to seek an investigation of me for alleged unauthorized disclosures punishable under the Espionage Act after I testified in front of Congress in 2023, discussing the results of my congressionally directed investigation in the support of the first Trump administration. This should concern every member of Congress, regardless of party. To this day, I'm still fighting years of record withholding, administrative obstruction, and a prolonged effort to get a medical military retirement that I still am not in a retired status. This is also a real fraud, waste, and abuse issue. President Vance's task force is sharply focused on the issue of misuse of funds. The same accountability problem applies here. And during my investigation, I found slush funds to the tune of billions of dollars per annum for these activities. We cannot have one standard for the American people and another standard for the deep state that hide behind the veil of secrecy. President Trump has the authority to create an enduring legacy of government transparency, accountability consistent with national security protections. Disclosure should not depend on leaks. It should not depend on the public taking my word for it or anyone else's. American people deserve more than vague denials and selective releases of prior administrations, to include through troubled organizations such as ARROW. I applaud the president's efforts and his promise to show true American leadership on this issue of massive worldwide interest, over 1 billion views on the File Drop website. So the time has come to stop asking the public to trust secret conclusions. Instead, provide an honest accounting of what it knows, what it's done, and what has been withheld. God bless America.
I think we have about 4 minutes before they call votes to open it up for a quick round of questions. So if you guys can just, let's start with Real America's Voice.
Great. I have a question for David Grusch. Can you confirm for us how many species? Recent reports have said that there are perhaps 4 different alien species raised. How many species are you aware of?
I certainly don't have the compendium. It's a continuum from corporeal, bipedal type life to, what I would consider like sentient plasmoid life. But there are several that the U.S. government is aware of.
First question for you, Mr. Grusch.
Okay.
During the course of your investigation, it's been surfaced to the public that there's been a program by the name of Immaculate Constellation. During the course of your investigation, did you recognize that the infrastructure to support such a program for exfiltration of data from federal systems would exist?
Yeah, I can't comment on the content of that program. I've discussed on my interview in Judicial Watch that was a National Security Council program. And the secrecy started in 1954 through an Eisenhower executive order that created that infrastructure.
Thank you very much.
So before we get into that, I do want to welcome into the chat this gentleman here. Of course, I like how this all delay. It's like I'm just trying. I'm anonymous now. That's cute.
Well, you're both. So.
Yeah, it's like, all right. Longhorn, hey, what's up, man? Well, it shows up on the YouTube chat the right way. Who knows, right? With this stuff, who knows? Longhorn is a member over on Andy's Discord, that UFO podcast, and on Pavel Seco Activo, his Discord as well. And we talk quite a bit. So welcome into the show, Longhorn. We certainly appreciate you being here. So with Grusch's statement there, everybody, of course, zeroed in on the stuff about bipedal life, sentient plasmoid, as far as like the entities that are here. And I get it, that's important stuff, is obviously, because sentient plasmoid, and what are we talking? What exactly are we talking about here, Dave? The bipedal stuff is interesting, but I think one of the things that flew under the radar on this whole thing that, from me, Nick is your name. All right. Yeah. I thought you were Gary. Oh, my name's Dave. This is PC Tutty. We're not going to tell you his real name for security purposes.
Sure.
Yeah.
It is my real name. What are you talking about?
That's right. That is your real name. But I think one of the things that Dave was talking about that really flew under the radar was that the Air Force worked with an external agency to come after him for a possible violation of the Espionage Act after he made his testimony to Congress, which is kind of tying back into the whole constitutional crisis that we're talking about. It's like, wait a second. He was subpoenaed, or whatever the situation was. He goes and he testifies before Congress. He raises his hand. He says all this stuff. And the Air Force works with an outside agency to drum up possible Espionage Act charges. It's like, where did you guys get the authority to do that? That's certainly not in the Constitution. You're the Air Force. You're not an intelligence agency. It should be right. If you're saying you violated the Espionage Act, that should come from an intelligence agency, CIA, or one of these other places. But for the Air Force to kind of do this is very interesting. But Dave had a lot to say there, and of course they're all pushing for greater disclosure during this conference, and the stuff about the different types of entities. Rob Jones came on at the end, asked about Immaculate Constellation, which of course Matt Brown is the author of that. And Dave didn't want to go into all that. There is going to be more about David Grusch as we go along later on in this episode, where he illuminates on a lot of this stuff. But Tony, I'll go to you, man. Just your thoughts on what Dave had to say there. There's, he's talking about a lot of concerning things there that, can't get a medical retirement. Even though they leaked his medical records as soon as he testified to Congress, which is cute. But Dave raises some concerning stuff in that statement.
It just feels like the lengths that they're trying to go to muzzle him, for lack of a better term, right? It almost seems like it's more than just information. Like it'd be disclosing a history of immoral acts by these institutions on top of hiding information, right? Doesn't it seem like there's more than just hiding information? And that's what kind of gets to me, right? It's like, okay, you just because you've done something horrible, why you got to ruin somebody else's life? But at the same time, we go back to who should be trusted with the information is always ends up to being the bottom line. And you talk about the public being so unaware, like you just mentioned, the different types of aliens that we think that exists, right? And what does that mean? It means it's going to scare the shit out of a lot of people,
Right. Well, no, and it's true. It's like when you think about the various entities who've been rumored to exist, right? They talk about the Nordics, ABBA, that sort of thing. The Swedish-looking people. You've got the reptilians. You've talked a lot about that. You heard about the Greys. That's the most prevalent one. You've heard about the mantic creatures, right? Sentient plasmoids is one that I had not heard before. Now,
it almost describes itself, though, doesn't it? It's just kind of this plasma-based thing that can change shapes, but it's sentient. It's aware of its being and it's aware of its surroundings. That makes total sense to me. That one's self-explanatory, right?
Right. And there's a lot of talk about plasma over the years that has come up about things that people are seeing that look plasma in nature. And the fact that these are demonstrating sentient sort of properties is not particularly surprising. So look, there's a lot more to that event that I'm not going to play the full 35 minutes of it, because everybody showed that. They showed that on Doomer Friday. They showed it live on News Nation. Ryan Sprague at Somewhere in the Sky. A lot of people were live streaming the event. Those were the highlights that I wanted to showcase because it was a good event. I think it was another. There's a lot of that was going on this week where you look at somebody and say, "Ah, it's a nothing burger. There nothing came of this thing." But really, when you get down to it, Dave talking about them going after him for testifying to Congress is concerning. Um, Different variations of alien beings that Dave's talking about as well. The big push for disclosure. Eric Burleson saying waive the NDAs of all these guys, right?
Yeah.
And that's a big deal if you can get that, not just amnesty, but and the thing I've always been concerned about, because there were rumors that they were going to have this 60-day window where anybody could come forward and spill their guts. And as long as you came forward in 60 days, you were going to get amnesty, immunity. And my concern about that was always, well, what about the guys who already came forward? What about guys like Lou Elizondo, Dylan Borlan, Matthew Brown, Dave Grusch? These guys who've already whistleblown, shouldn't they get amnesty and immunity as well? And Burleson saying, let's give it to everybody, no matter when they came forward, was a big moment for me, because I'm like, yes, fine, as long. But I mean, and we're going to get into this stuff, and the whole aspect of how far should amnesty go, and don't you have to look at the nature of the crime that has been done as well? We'll talk about that as we go along. But that was a June 9th event. And then from there, things were kind of sort of quiet. Everybody overanalyzed that. And then we got to the third file drop, which coincidentally was on the same day that Disclosure Day. I mean, Disclosure Day came out the night before, and a lot of people saw it the night before. There were advanced screenings, and there were like spoiler-free sort of things going on. But this third file drop came down on Friday morning, November 12th, or not November, June 12th. And when it first came out, I watched like Andy McGrillen from that UFO podcast, and Nick will know exactly who Andy is. And Andy jumped on there and he put out his initial thoughts on this thing. And Andy was, he thought it was disappointing. And, from what I could gather from looking at it initially, I thought, okay, this is kind of disappointing. There's not much here. At least that was the initial impression. A couple days later, though, Richard Dolan came out and he did a full breakdown, like 45-minute breakdown. And he identified some stuff that I didn't really realize was in there. And I want to cover some of that, and then we're going to talk Disclosure Day. But this third file drop comes out, and I'm going to see if I can't come in here and share some of this stuff with you guys. And I'm not going to do an exhaustive review of everything, obviously, but there is some interesting stuff here. And let's see if I can't pull some of these documents up. Okay. Don't need that. Here we go. This one's an interesting one. Where are we? Yeah. Okay. So this document is talking about an event from Zimbabwe. And this does show up on the website, which is, of course, where I got it from. I'm not wise enough to make this stuff up on my own. But what this one is talking about is where's this window? Okay. It's going in a different direction here. All right. Where is? Okay. So this Zimbabwe event is from Harare, Zimbabwe, from June. Okay, so this is from placement on high alert due to perceived aggressive foreign posturing. Now, that doesn't exactly say a whole lot, but it says enough. And if we can go through here and look at this. So, where is it? I've lost it, Tony. Oh, man. Yeah, Nick, I saw it twice as well. We'll talk about that. All right, let me try and pull this back up, because that failed miserably. There we go. Okay, that's what's going on. Stupid thing. All right. All right, so looking at this document, you've got, this is the White House Situation Room, Washington, D.C., DNI. They're talking about the country Zimbabwe. There's not a whole lot of this that gets redacted, but they're reporting from Zimbabwe regarding an unidentified object hovering at high altitude over the Harare International Airport. This object was observed possibly by both radar and optical means in the skies during the afternoon of 2nd of July, 2008. Hovered at an undetermined altitude directly over the airport. At one point, beams were observed emanating from the object. Like, okay. Individuals who were aware of the incident had debated whether the object was an advanced reconnaissance device belonging to a foreign government or whether the object was, uh, I mean, and they actually say this, whether the object was an unidentified flying object of extraterrestrial origins. According to observers, the object was disc-like in shape with a hollow center and had a series of rotating lights on the underside of the airframe. After a period under observation from the ground, the rotating lights under the object shifted colors, quickly ascended to higher altitudes and out of the visual range. And that's pretty much all that there is to it. So that's kind of an interesting one, right, Tony? I mean, it's like, something's going on at the Zimbabwe airport. They're watching this whole thing, and they don't have a good explanation for that. So, of course, it'd be great to see the high resolution video, but they didn't get that. But it's what's that?
Of course.
Of course not. Yeah, they never had that. Other stuff that they got on this third tranche of documents here is, let's see. So we've got, this one from Colorado Springs. So let me pull that one up for you. I think this is the right one. Federal Bureau of Investigation. Yeah, I think this is the right one. If it's not, then we'll share this and go back to the other one. Okay. All right. So with this one is it's a Federal Bureau of Investigation sometime in July of 2024. Okay, so this is not the one I was thinking of. But so on June something 2024, they are not, obviously they're redacting cell numbers and all that sort of stuff. But a lot of this stuff was filmed with like iPhone 14s and stuff like that. So after being identified of the identities of the interviewing individuals, provided the following information to aid in the forensic recreation of the UAP and its activity observed over Cheyenne Mountain. What the heck was that? Sorry, guys. Something upset the dogs.
It was me.
Why? What did you do?
I walked up the stairs.
Oh,
And into the
don't do
space.
that, Mrs. Attitude, my wife. So a former U.S. Army intelligence officer, along with 4 other members of his unit, observed a UAP over the Cheyenne Mountains. As they exited their office building, described the day as the perfect bluebird skies. There were no clouds, little humidity, 50 degrees Fahrenheit. This object was potato-shaped with distinct edges and appeared to look painted in a creamy, whitish, opalescent color, somewhat translucent with a slight shimmer, made up of what can best be described as articulating fish scales, or panels that were non-symmetrical, non-overlapping, and irregular shape. The object itself was perfectly still, but each panel on the object shifted in slow waves, starting at different points of origin, but at the same time. After about 2 minutes, the object vanished, specifically stated the object cloaked. What are we talking about here? In the space of time it took to turn ahead, and there was no shadow. Now, this one, I think this is one of the ones where they actually did like an artist rendering. And you see some of this stuff in these files where they come in here and they do these artist renderings. So let me see if I can't find the artist rendering on here. Where is this one? PDF there. So I'm trying to find this. I know I saw it once before. So orb sighting. There we go. That's not it. It's somewhere on here.
This file find is brought to you by Fiji Water. Have a search. Try some
Are they
Fiji
actually
water.
are they sponsoring us? I mean,
I don't
I'll
know.
take the money.
I just Mercedes-Benz, Lego, Sony, whatever, Disney. We'll take it.
I'm not gonna
You got
take the
money? You want to sponsor us? Send it
Yeah.
on over.
Fiji, if you want to sponsor us, we're cool with that sort of thing. So, I'm not sure where that is. Anyway, but they did a rendering of this thing. I'll try and keep finding it. Is this it? No, that's just the same Colorado Springs stuff. Anyway, let's move on though, because there's other stuff to talk about. Okay, so some of the other stuff. I know, Lick. We're trying to pimp for money here from anybody who wants to sponsor us. So if you know anyone, send it our way. But anyway, going back, there's another. So let me see. I want to close these out because there was another document here. Oh, there we go. I actually like thought ahead, Tony, and I actually did this in advance, but you'd
You
never
know,
know it, right?
when you clean your room, you can't find shit, Dave.
I know. So here is the artist rendering of this thing that they saw. Um,
That looks like a
certainly looks
potato, bro.
looks like it does look like a potato. Yeah, I mean, so the description is very accurate. They did get this potato aspect of this thing's right. You're like, well, okay, but again, it's not the actual photo. It's a
Right.
digital rendering of this whole thing, and you see that quite a few times in this tranche of files that they did, where they got artist rendering of events, which it kind of brings it to life, but at the same time, it's like, well, what are we talking about here, guys? I mean, you know, it's like, can't we get like some real video up here and that sort of thing? But it is what it is. So looking at some of this other stuff, there's and I want to find this one because it's very interesting. Okay, stop sharing that. Okay. So, like, remember when we did the first file drop, Tony, right? And there was that document that we found that was talking about the events in the Western United States, right? And there were orbs and we're talking about like the Eye of Sauron, that sort of thing. There's a bunch of stuff in here from um, from that same event, which is like, okay, they did further work. Arrow actually did some stuff here, and I think like there's like let's see this. There's a digital rendering here. See if I can't share this part. I have to download the image. Okay, let's see. So this is kind of an interesting one. This is one of these orbs that they saw out in the Western United States. So again, this is a digital rendering. It's not anything specific, that sort of thing. But you know, there's a lot of stuff here, and I think like the Arrow document in this whole third tranche of records, they kind of came to the conclusion, and I know a lot of us talk about Arrow and all that sort of stuff and the issues that we've had with Arrow, but they were of the opinion like 40% of these they couldn't explain. And that's a pretty significant number for Arrow to flat out say we don't know what the hell these things are. And 40% of it is like, wow, Arrow's kind of talking about stuff. There's documents and a bunch of stuff that happened from the northeastern United States. And I think this is where one of the more prevalent or more notable videos came from on this thing. And where is the video of this thing? I mean, here we go. So this is northeastern orb sighting. This is the one that everybody's seen. You know, this one has been out there quite a bit. And I can play this for you because this is the most shared one that I think I've come across so far. So you can see in this video, well, I'll shut up and let you watch it yourself, Tony. I mean, is it interesting? Yes. Is it compelling? Not particularly. Well, they're still going there.
There's something
ahead,
there,
man.
but there's something there. But you know, if I'm holding that camera, I'm moving around a little bit more, trying to get
Right.
better angle and shit. You know, I'm running up and
Right.
getting into an open spot and.
Right. And these things are done off of iPhones, you know, and not like professional photography and that sort of thing. Anytime I see two objects moving in synchronicity like that, not demonstrating erratic movements, to me that says, you know, I've heard a lot of people say sky lanterns, Chinese sky lanterns, that sort of thing. Maybe. I'm not sure what they'd be doing out there in the middle of the northeastern United States at this time of year, but it's kind of fascinating stuff as well. But that was like the best video that came out. There's other videos that came out, but they weren't really like, I've seen some talked about triangular formations. I didn't really notice anything spectacular about that. But again, this is one of these situations where I think it's not the videos. What just happened? Oh, okay. What happened? Well, we're still recording. Why is there an echo now?
I don't hear it.
Okay. Well, maybe it went away. So some other records that are in this third UFO file drop that are significant. Um, there's a CIA scientific advisory panel on unidentified flying objects. This is from 1952 to 1953. And let me get, there's one page that I wanted specifically to look at. And here it is, page 37. So let me share this. Okay. So, like on this page, I'm looking at specifically here, paragraph 4. Naturally, there's general concern about the radar phantoms and the larger problem of the flying saucers because we are unable to explain a sizable percentage of the reports. However, the consensus seems to be that a great deal of activity and study is going on in this field, which will do much to clarify the situation. Subject of anomalous radar propagation has been under study for some time and will continue with appropriate emphasis. The Air Technical Intelligence Center with analysis saucer reports will emphasize the radar confusion aspect. I also think that, and I'll stop there, but I think like going back, and I want to go back to where this document is originally listed. And this is the part that I want to share because this is the actual description of this document, which is very enlightening to say. So this is the part. The panel, they're talking about the panel, and this is a CIA document. So the panel identified a significant indirect threat stemming from the public's fascination with the subject. The panel concluded that the high volume of reports encouraged by a, quote, sensationalist press could overwhelm and clog vital intelligence communication channels, potentially distracting from genuine threats. Furthermore, they warned that a morbid national psychology could be exploited by adversaries to incite hysterical behavior and harmful distrust of duly constituted authority. To mitigate these risks, the panel recommended an official policy of debunking to strip the UFO subject of its mystery, alongside a training initiative for military personnel to better recognize and filter out misidentified objects, thereby reducing communication noise and allowing the national security apparatus to focus on more legitimate defense concerns. So this is an interesting statement here, in my opinion, because you've got the government saying there's a national security issue here. The UFOs are creating a problem with all this. And I mean, is this where the official debunking policy was born? Because it sure looks like from this document, they're talking about there's an official debunking policy enacted by the CIA in 1952, 53, somewhere in there. And I mean, did you read that the same way? I get why they're doing it, but at the same time, it's like, is this where this was born? This official policy of debunking, marginalizing, and making fun of it.
If not born, then like the beginning of enforcement of it, right?
Right. Yeah.
Because like, what are we talking? Like, our like the history of really like the government that are from what we've been doing is like the mid 40s, right? Post World War II. I mean, there were some things in between World War I and World War II, but a lot of the things really get kicking and people start publicly coming forward after World War II, right?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's right. 47, all that stuff happens. Nick said, yeah, you need to get the UAP sensors you mentioned at Contact in the Desert. Yeah. I mean, I've got the UAP detector, which is a really cool thing. It can be a little sensitive, but I think, Nick, I will send you a message, man, in one of the Discord chats where I got that off of Amazon. They're a little pricey. They're like $275, but really that's not too terrible when you think about it. Not going to spend too much more time on this drop, but there are a couple more things I wanted to kind of.
It's less than a new driver, Dave.
That's true. And I do need one of those as well. But all right. So going back, there's a lot. There's like I know there's like Richard Dolan was talking about secret, like some document 14 or something like that, which is out there as well. I'm trying to find this one document that is pretty interesting. Because it touches on, let's see, current status of spec. So I'm just scrolling through here. There's a lot. There's like 6 pages of stuff. Like things I'm not going to get into. Report on conversations with Soviet scientists on the subject of unidentified flying objects in the USSR. That's worth a read just to see what's going on over in Russia.
Well, too, like, what are there some things that we don't know about the Cold War behind the scenes too?
Well, I mean, and a lot of these reports really focus on the belief that the Soviets had developed flying saucer technology of their own as a weapon that they could utilize in against the United States. We got Project Blue Book Special Report number 14. That's the one that Richard Dolan specifically mentioned, but that's been out there for a long time. That sort of
Interesting.
thing.
The interesting thing too is like a lot of these sightings over the years. Some are reported or kind of seen as like what they seen was being used by experienced users, and some of them are maybe reverse engineered by us and just making mistakes and being caught using it, right? You know what I'm saying? Instead of some of these sightings could be us trying to figure out how to use this
Oh,
technology as
sure.
opposed to just being, alien life forms coming in with their own ships.
There's little doubt that some of this stuff is reverse engineered, or at least a strong suspicion that some of this stuff is reverse engineered. Of course, that begs the question, as we said many times on the show, where did we get that technology? Is it our own human ingenuity, or did we get that from somewhere? And that's the thing that no one knows for sure. It could be both, that sort of thing. But here's this one's very interesting because this one's coming from Australia, and Five Eyes and all that kind of stuff. But let me show this. So okay, so this
Sorry
is
for your
a
loss yesterday, Australia.
sorry, not sorry, because the U.S. beat you. But anyway, so this is a report from Australia that I would urge people look at it because it's there's 19 pages, but it's really the beginning of this where they're talking about like this part, paragraph 3. By erecting a facade of ridicule, the U.S. hoped to allay public alarm, reduce the possibility of the Soviet taking advantage of UFO mass sightings for either psychological or actual warfare purposes. This is what we were just talking about, Tony. And act as a cover for the real U.S. program of developing vehicles that emulate UFO performances. The RAAP, together with many other countries of the world, give credence only to the U.S. AP public facade and appear to have uncritically accepted the associated information. So this information has been widely discredited by retiring U.S. service personnel and formally engaged on UFO investigations, as well as by scientists and private citizens. I like this part. The conclusions of the Condon report conflict with its own contents and have been discredited by many reputable scientists, including the UFO Scientific Council to the United States Air Force. And it says, they go on, it would appear wrong for Australia to remain ignorant of the true situation. We lack an intelligence viewpoint that can assess the nature and possible consequences of the problem, scientific viewpoint that could derive scientifically valid data from the reports, a public relations viewpoint that can honestly so right here you've got the Australians issuing a report that's basically calling out the United States as like, look, you guys are like doing this disinformation campaign. The Condon report conflicts with itself, with your own findings, and we're not necessarily going to buy into this whole thing. Yeah, Russia and China have the same materials and craft. We have Ohio metal, though, and that counts for a lot. Ohio, the steel mills of West Virginia and that sort of thing. I like.
Dave, it's funny with the misinformation campaign, right? Or kind of like playing it off as something that's not right. You wonder how many directives from the government to Hollywood movies from the 60s, 70s, and 80s to make this whole phenomenon seem sensationalized. So people that go to those things go, well, come on. I mean, we're talking about the same thing here. Give me a break. You know what I mean? Like that could easily be seen as like a deception, a misdirection as well. Like I can't imagine that hasn't happened.
Oh, there's all sorts of misinformation and things like that to try and downplay this. I mean, and that still goes on to this day. I mean, they're trying to get around that with some of the stuff that we've talked about, but yeah, it's still prevalent. So that's just kind of like a scratching the surface of what's in that third file drop. I do think, once you get into some of the records and things like that, it is more significant than I think maybe we originally thought. And there's a lot more information there that like the first two drops, I think like this one actually had some more meat on the bone, not the videos and that sort of thing, because there was a ton of videos released. They only released like 6 videos from this, but the documents are really interesting when you start reading stuff like Arrow's reporting, and I couldn't find it here, and I don't want to take up a lot more time, but Arrow's reporting on the Western States events, which we covered the last time we talked about this, but you get to see that, okay, this is a much bigger event than people realize, because now you've got all these FBI agents, you've got law enforcement, they're all talking about the same event happening out in the Western United States. We know for a fact that Arrow took this seriously because they were investigating it and ultimately saying, hey, 40% of these we can't explain. It's like, well, that's a significant number, when they're saying we can't explain 40% of these. So, I don't know. What do you think? What do you think of that drop compared to the first two that we broke down a couple weeks ago?
I don't know. I mean, how would you differentiate it specifically? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. I think the documents are a little bit more significant in this one. I say that, but there's a lot of stuff in the second drop about the Sandia Labs and all that documentation of the Green Fireballs event that was taking place in 1948. Um, Again, none of these videos, as we're about to discuss, are not going to match up with anything in Disclosure Day. And I think that's what everybody's looking for, that 4K, that super clear video. We want videos of the aliens. We got videos of the bodies. We want all this stuff. We're not getting that. And I think from the video standpoint, these remain a big, like, who cares sort of thing. Like, I think like the last tranche that came down, when I came back and did that second part of that thing where there's videos where it's like, I don't know what I'm even looking at here. People are disappearing into canyons and it's like, what is all this stuff?
Right. People think that when things get released or there's disclosure on certain segments of what we're trying to find out, that you're going to find something utterly significant and prominent, and it's just not the case, right? It's all kind of subjective and poor quality, to be honest with you, and people
Right.
are expecting to go watch a movie
Yes.
and see what's on your shirt, or see poking and prodding, or see an actual spaceship that you can go up and actually see that you're next to, right? But you're not gonna. It seems like we're a ways away from that.
Well, and they're not spoon feeding you this information.
Right.
You have to go find it yourself, that sort of thing. They're just like, it's like, here you go find it yourself. And that's okay. I mean, it requires you to do work. If you really want to get to the good stuff and find some good information, you got to do the work yourself, or watch some of the breakdowns from guys like Richard Dolan or Andy or some of these other shows, or what we've just done here, which is only like skimming the surface of that third drop. All right. So this is the part of the show where we are going to review Disclosure Day. Now, if you don't want spoilers, leave now. Come
You
back
haven't
in about.
from filling my water.
Yes, you have been warned that we're going to spend probably 20 minutes or so breaking down Disclosure Day. You have been warned. I appreciate the views, but I do not want this movie spoiled for anybody and that sort of thing. So, yes. Okay. So, yeah, Bogota, Colombia, pretty clear one. That's the one that flies, the manta ray thing that flies right by the plane. That is like,
Important to know, not part of the third drop, though.
It's right. Not part of it. And nobody's really commenting on that thing. And I'd really like some detailed analysis, because that's one of the best videos I've ever seen. I agree with Nick there as well. That's one of the best ones. So, Disclosure Day. Like I said, I've seen it twice now. And I will say I enjoyed it more the second time. But I think before I get to your thoughts on this thing, Tony, I think it's critically important for people to understand this is a movie. This is not fucking Disclosure. If you went there thinking you were going to get Disclosure, you were obviously going to be somewhat disappointed with this. And I think from the comments and the things I read after the movie, a lot of people came out of there thinking there was going to be some great revelation by Steven Spielberg. And maybe there is. Maybe 10 years from now we'll realize, damn, Steve was right about all that stuff. But I think if you go in there looking for that, as opposed to realizing this is a movie, it is a summer blockbuster, it really will set you up for failure as far as your enjoyment of this. So with that being said, I know what I've thought of this. I've talked to other people about it. Your thoughts, Tony, what did you think of Disclosure Day?
First of all, I enjoyed myself. I thought it was a good movie. The only thing we kind of said to each other last night was, I can't believe that I start watching this movie and it opens with a wrestling match.
Right,
and
right.
We're big wrestling fans and everything else.
We thought we were being. Are we being punked here? What is going on here?
Hey, where did you send me? But no, it was good. There were some parts where I was like, oh, I got to deal with this again. Or there was parts where, like, the escape was real simplistic.
Oh God,
Uh,
we'll
so
talk.
yeah, but overall, I enjoyed like the last 30 minutes the most.
Mhm.
And being removed a few days from it now, this could have been an epic series. This should have been
Yes,
a series. You could have told more of a story, right? You kind of got 2 days and 2.5 hours. That's basically what this movie is, right? 2 days and 2.5 hours. You don't
yes,
get more than 2 days in the movie. Um,
right.
you could have told the story of these people that have left the agency that was holding the information, and talk about the things of how they had to leave their families. And you could have been more invested in these characters and things of that nature. But it was he. Nick was hoping for Liv Morgan. We're all hoping for Liv Morgan. Us
Yeah,
blooded
man.
heterosexual men, my friend, and a lot of women.
Yes,
Um, but overall, I enjoyed it very, 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 very much. So, who's the actress again, Dave? I don't want to say.
Emily Blunt.
I always go to Blake
She
Lively. I always go mix her and Blake Lively. She was
look.
excellent, and
Oh
she
God,
grew on me as the movie went on. She made me hate her boyfriend. Um, you
Russ
know,
or Wyatt Russell. Yeah.
yeah, and I just thought the actors that played the different parts were really well done. Overall, very good, very entertaining. I didn't think it was too long. I mean, every movie can be tightened up for the most part a little bit, but I didn't mind the 225, I think it was.
Yeah.
Um, Came out of it really liking it, and the end like hit me with something that I kind of feel like I want to say to management a lot when you're at work and involved in a company is, the good Lord up above gave you 2 ears and one mouth for a reason. You
Listen.
should proportionalize the amount you talk and listen in that aspect.
Yeah. Um, Emily Blunt should probably get some consideration for an Academy Award for this
She's
role
great.
because she killed it.
Yes.
Especially like the part where they barely escaped from the where with the whole scene with the train and that
Train.
sort of thing, and her
Oh,
visceral reaction to that, where she's losing
afterward.
it and thinking
Yeah.
that's Parkinson's and all that stuff, was massively, massively powerful. Um, there are certainly problems with this. My biggest problem with this movie, and even watching it a second time, I said this to Matt Brown. I said, yeah, watching it a second time, I picked up on other things that I liked more, but the farmhouse scene is just bullshit. You cannot reconcile that because it's
Why
like,
is
wait a second,
he runs back into 40 freaking agents and 10 cars and
right?
and then the time where they ditch them at the end, they get caught and then they kind of just walk around the bushes and walk away when they
Right,
let the car go off the cliff. Those
right,
were a few
right.
of them. Like, Steve, you could have done way better here, Steve.
Yeah, yeah. And it's just like, and I mean, it's like when you compare the stuff like that to like Raiders of the Lost Ark and chase scenes, and like the train scene was cool. I'll give
Yes.
it that. But when they come back to the farmhouse and he's ducking down and there is no cover, and you're looking at the fences, like there's no shrubbery, there is nobody's looking behind them. All these, they're not federal agents. They're from this company, Wardex or whatever it is. So I get it, but it's like nobody's looking behind you to see, and he just like nobody sees this guy running up on these cars, and then he gets wedged in between the two trees, and it's like they make the Wardex guys look completely inept in this scene. And but that's like the only big thing that I could say about it. I think like a lot of people, and I went to see it with like my nephew-in-law, who's the biggest skeptic, doesn't believe in anything, thought it was boring up until like the last 30 minutes. I disagree with that. I think like the thing about this movie is watching it back the second time, what I realized, what dawned on me was that, okay, it it's a movie. Okay. So the fact that he's steering into the more woo aspect of things, the psychological things, the stuff that was done to the kids, that they were abducted, kind of, sort of, yes. They weren't like medical procedures weren't done on them. They were given powers by these beings. And from the standpoint of a movie, that makes a lot more sense because it's like, well, that's you want to steer into the more fantastical elements because it is a movie. If they wanted to just do a movie like people were hoping, well, I want to see the craft and the nuts and the bolts. Like, well, they've got tons of documentaries for that, so you don't
Right.
need that for this. So if you're looking for that, then you're certainly going to be set up to be disappointed. And looking at it from the standpoint of, okay, this is just a really good movie. They're touching on and it's very important that they touched on the experiencer side of things, and I'll talk about that at the end of this episode a little bit. But I thought it was really good. I think when disclosure actually happens, that really hit me, because it's something that people like me have been wanting to see for so long. Some sort of disclosure on that level where it all comes out and you see the true video and you see the aliens, and and it's disturbing when they're like torturing these beings and that sort of thing. But go ahead, Tony.
So Emily Blunt, amazing, right? I mean, if she gets nominated Golden Globe, I don't know about Oscar. We'll see. I wouldn't be mad at it. But the best performance in this movie is by the reporter that's reporting on World War III,
Yeah.
and is being told by the man, the station, the producer, that we're going away from that to give you this, and the emotional roller coaster that she goes on from the second she goes from World War III to this disclosure to the end of her part of her broadcast is very emotional, very real, gives you an idea of what people are actually feeling and going through as they're realizing, like, this isn't AI. This isn't good either. This is people acting poorly and showing us things that have been going wrong and things that have been hidden from us. And her performance and taking us on that emotional journey in a very short period of time was absolutely excellent.
Yeah, you're spot on there, man. Her pivot from not understanding why are we covering this, the world's on the brink, we're at DEFCON 2, and then how they pivot to this whole thing. Now, one of the things I commented on about that scene, where you get to the end and the disclosure happens, is I do have my serious doubts and reservations that the world would grind to a halt like that with everybody watching, as desensitized as people are. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe if you really dropped everything all at once in that magnitude, and people saw these sort of like not infrared, not FLIR videos, but you got to see true craft, true beings. They showed the footage from Roswell. They showed the footage from Kecksburg. That hits people like me really hard, because it's like this is something that we've believed in so much, and then to have them say, and the reporters, they don't know what's going on. Is this an official release? Is this official declassification? What is all this stuff? But I thought it was an excellent movie. I think Andy gave it like an 8 out of 10. Pavel gave it an 8.5. I even said watching it, and I specifically went the second time, Tony, looking to downgrade this, and I couldn't. I enjoyed it more the second time around. I still would give it an 8 out of 10. I did not find a whole lot of things. And actually, it's interesting. I went there looking at it through a different lens the second time, looking at it strictly. This is a movie. I'm not looking at this as anything more than that. And it's funny, I found more truth in the movie by looking at it that way than I did the first time.
Courtney
Go ahead.
Grace. Courtney Grace.
Oh, the girl, the reporter. Yeah, she was good. Um, but it's a fascinating concept that you get the aliens. They gave these kids separate powers that did not manifest at the same time. Like Josh or Daniel's powers manifested many years ago while he was at college, and it really and watching it back the second time, his story is very powerful. That he got this ability to communicate through math, the language of the universe, and it caused him to be shunned by everybody. He didn't have any friends because he couldn't relate to anybody, and that's difficult to listen. And then Margaret, that sort of thing. She shows up at the point where she has this unique ability to get kind of like drop in on everybody and that sort of thing. Nick, my daughter wanted more grays. We got the one big gray at the end, which we'll talk about in just a second. But there are various elements that are really, that we know a lot about, those of us in the community: remote viewing, by location, using that device that Colin Firth's character was using. And then, you got Coleman Domingo's character, Hugo, who obviously they've got this relationship with each other. And at the very end, it's kind of cool that they come to this understanding. Colin Firth's character, Hugo, they kind of come to this whole understanding, because, like, I know the one guy is like, you're not going to stop her. What are you going to do? Try and shoot her? She's got the device. That's not going to work.
They've been defeated. Like he is like fully accepting defeat, and now like, okay, well, I want to see what happens next. You talked about you guys grade. I'm gonna give it a 7, and that's not a bad thing from me either, right? Like I tell you, I enjoyed this movie.
Anybody who's watched the Big Five project will know that's a pretty high score for you. No, it's really well done. I mean, at the end where they break out the alien, which is kind of like, I mean, a lot of people were thinking this would be a spiritual successor to Close Encounters, and maybe that scene kind of sort of was, where they break out the alien, who's an older alien. He's a gray. He's been, he comes out of the wheelchair. He says something to Daniel, which only Daniel can understand. He interprets it for Margaret, and then you get the whole listen thing at the end, which, of course, is going to create all sorts of speculation. Well, what did they mean by that? I don't really know, but with the world on the brink of war, having somebody come out there and say, stop what you're doing and listen, probably not a bad idea at that point. So, I'm glad you enjoyed it. It warms my heart to know that you enjoyed it. I hope, I know I was hoping Ray would see it so he could come on with us, but he's got other stuff going on, but I hope he watches it and he talks about that. But yeah, I think Disclosure Day is a solid movie. You got to approach it from the right standpoint. You got to look at it as this is entertainment. This is a movie. Is there truth wedged into this movie? Probably. We may not know about that for a few years, that sort of thing. Is this the way we all want disclosure to happen? Sure. Absolutely dump it all out there. And I think a lot of us are like, hey, man, throw it all out there. Like we talked about with the file drops. You're not telling us anything. Well, fuck, just throw it all out there anyway. Let people make up their own mind. If you don't want to tell us what's really going on, that's fine. People are smart enough to draw their own impressions and their own interpretations. Throw it all out there. But I think the impact of the movie kind of resonates a lot with what we're going to talk about for the rest of the episode here. So, for those of you who checked out, you can come back in now. It's all that sort of thing. You can come back in here and jump on back in here with us. As Disclosure Day, as that day was unrolling on Friday, one of the best things that I see every Friday from my standpoint, as a podcaster and somebody who's a big fan of podcasters, is this show called Doomer Friday, which is kind of turned into an amalgamation of some of the best of the UFO podcasts that Nick and I both follow a lot. Because you've got Clint Weldon from Night Shift, got Xander Jones from Dreamland Motel, you've got Dan Cleary from what is it? Brothers from Another Mother, or other. It's a UFO. I'm sorry, Dan. Don't shoot me for that. I always get it wrong. But you've got Pavel Ibarra from Psychoactivo. Pavel's heavily involved. Andy McGrillen from that UFO podcast has been showing up a lot more on those shows. On this episode of Doomer Friday, they had UAP Gerb, who, Tony, you think I put together detailed historical analysis? I am a fucking amateur compared to Gerb. He is the man on this thing. I can't even touch him, nor would I want to try, because his episodes take like weeks and months to put together. They also had Rob Jones came out from News Nation. We heard Rob on the David Grusch interview asking the question about Immaculate Constellation. But we got a surprise along the way that whistleblower Dylan Borlan started to talk in the chat. And, I said on the last episode, I talk to Dylan, fairly often here and there, that sort of thing about stuff. So they brought Dylan on to Doomer Friday to actually talk in an environment. Now, he did show up at Contact in the Desert. Dylan was there with Matthew Brown, and he said a lot of things there. This is the first time he really kind of came out in a public setting on a podcast that wasn't like weaponized, where Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp, who I have nothing but respect and love for. Yeah, Nick's like, love me some Doomer. Whoop, that's the wrong one. This is the one. Okay. Nothing but respect, but Dylan kind of flew without a safety net on this whole thing. And I'm going to play some stuff from Dylan Borland here on Doomer Friday. Obviously not all of it, because he was on for like 35, 45 minutes. I want to hit the highlights, and then I'll talk about something else that's not in the video, that sort of thing, and get into it. So let me pull this one up. Okay. Wow, I'm actually prepared for this, Tony. It's shocking.
You son of a biscuit.
I know, man. It's like, what the hell?
Start bringing a little professionalism to our work.
Hey, man, I see people struggle with these live streams, and I'm like, I feel your pain, man. But anyway, let's talk. This is like part one. I've got this split into two parts, but let's listen to what Dylan had to say here.
I keep telling people, don't look at what is said and done, look at what isn't said and what isn't done. And, you know, I think it's going in the right direction. Dave is a BA from PA, like myself, and you know, hopefully we get there. My concern, I think, Gerb, you know other people that are whistleblowers that I don't even know. I think the concern is if the toothpaste goes back in the tube, a lot of people are going to face some really more difficult times. And that's what Matt and I and other people are trying to build, is to insulate them from. So, yeah, but of course Dylan, they hit it, man.
I don't want to put you in a weird spot, but this did come up at Contact. Can you talk about that project, the one you just mentioned?
Vanguard. Just said the name.
You said, can you talk about Vanguard?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to get ahead of Matt. Matt and I are doing this joint with other whistleblowers. What I can say is exactly what we did say. We want to provide mental, physical, spiritual, financial help to whistleblowers in the interim. I mean, you know, I'll spell it out real easy. When the CIA and ODNI commit felonies against whistleblowers and they're not held accountable, what are we really talking about anymore? How can anybody expect a whistleblower to come forward and say, I'm working on this craft at this location, and they're going to lose their job, their family's going to be harassed, they're going to be doxxed? Why would anybody in their right mind do that? You know,
it's like trying to testify against the mob. I must feel basically the same, right? Except this mob is everywhere, and they know where you are.
Exactly, and this goes back to, you know, this exists as a stopgap. The hope is restitution and lawsuits follow. Matt and I should not be building an org with Jeff Nuttaselli and other whistleblowers, and in coordination with the other whistleblowers I don't want to name, to try and help out everybody in the interim. But you know, the fact of the matter is that people have lost their apartments. People are at risk of losing their homes. People have been doxxed. We're sharing money to try and make sure they have groceries for their kids. That's an insane situation. And you can't say, we're going to protect you, whistleblowers, come forward. And after you come forward, this happens. And it's kind of like, we don't know what to do. That's no bashing. That's no ill will. Everybody's trying to figure this out together. But that's the idea, is to just have a stopgap in hopes that legislation can be done and we can begin lawsuits. That's really it, you know.
When this project is launched fully, when Vanguard goes live, I guess, what is the best vision that you guys have on how everyday regular people who support what you're doing can help? Is it something that they're going to be able to just like donate to, or is this going to be like a traditional nonprofit where they can, I don't know, get involved in some way, or how does that actually work?
I mean, we're looking at things again, like when you have spouses and you have children who are watching their parents and their husbands and wives go through this. It's trying to get people to contribute. You know, therapists for family members would be great. We need CPAs, we need nurses, we need physical therapists. You know, ironically, Matt and I have a joke, is in a perfect world, this organization wouldn't exist because Congress and the executive and legislative branch would already be doing this for us. When you talk about crimes committed against whistleblowers, they come forward and highlight the crimes that are being done. This is why I said I'm not a UFO whistleblower in so much as I'm a crime and corruption whistleblower. I came forward because I was concerned about people's safety, which you guys brought up Matthew Sullivan. It's pretty clear that's a real thing that's happening. Dave's aware, I'm aware, most of us are aware. In a perfect world, this is a temporary stopgap and this organization doesn't exist after 6 months at most. Let's get legislation passed. Let's hold these companies, let's hold these agencies accountable. Let's move forward. You know, what you asked me about helping is, as I've said before, I'm no hero. I'm not, I don't like being thanked. I don't want to be public. I tell everybody, thank the others. Dave went and stuck his neck out. Jeff Nuttaselli, Mike Herrera, Jake Barber, Matthew Brown. Add the names. Go and add them. I came forward because I just happen to know what was done to me, and I happen to know what was done to others, and I just happen to know about UFOs. The reality is like I've said before, let's get the government accountable. Let's hold these people accountable. When Jeremy and George are saying felonies are committed against whistleblowers for blowing the whistle and protected whistleblower testimony, and that information is leaked to the public, I have a difficult time going and saying, yeah, great, let's go show some more IR videos. The conversation should be, who's going to be held accountable at the CIA and ODNI? That's my point in this.
Bravo. Well said. Thanks, Dylan.
Everybody else has done, they have done. I'm going to quote Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp. And Gerb, you're probably going to laugh your butt off, and Pavel, you probably will too. In McMinnville, when they're talking about leaked classified whistleblower testimony about power sources and hieroglyphs, what the hell are we talking about anymore, gentlemen? Let's be clear. What are we talking about anymore?
Yeah. And that's not an isolated incident, right? Like, recall Mike Herrera, he even got his memorandum for record when he testified to Arrow specifically. That whole procedure was built to kind of entrap Mike, just to suck out the information he knew. If you recall Mike Herrera, I think on my channel, he was talking about Sean Kirkpatrick being in the briefing. The only question Sean Kirkpatrick asked during like the whole hour and a half briefing was about the paramilitary operators Mike saw. Who were they? Who were they? Who were they? And then Arrow used that testimony to lie about Mike's testimony in the Arrow Historical Report, Volume 1. So whether it's lying about whistleblowers, trying to entrap them, or reclassify witness testimony, institutions and services like Arrow have done an absolutely horrendous job.
So that's the first part I wanted to throw in there. I'm going to throw some other stuff. I think the important thing to take away from that, and I'm certainly not going to speak for Dylan, that sort of thing, and I'm not going to disclose anything that we've talked about. Obviously, Tunney, when they're talking lawsuits, you can kind of get where the interest in me might come from, that sort of thing. But I think the main thing to remember is that, like Dylan said, he's not really a UFO whistleblower. He's a crime and corruption guy. And the UFOs are kind of tangential to him, that sort of thing. But as he said at Contact in the Desert, as Jeremy Corbell revealed, you've got agents from, ODNI, the CIA, so that sort of thing, basically making up, leaking testimony that was obtained in a secured environment in the SCIF, and they leak that to journalists. And then they try and use that to paint Dylan with the brush of not just espionage, but treason. That's like the most serious crime that you can be accused with in the United States. And it carries with it, there is no statute of limitations. They can impose those charges against you forever. So go ahead, man.
Stick with me here. We cover a Game of Thrones, right? This is more of a game of unknowns. Unknown for the whistleblowers on how the public and the government's going to react, and unknown to what their safety is going to be moving forward. For the people that know the information that we want, the unknown for them is how will the public react. And for the public, the unknown is all this information that we want but are unable to attain, or is not being disclosed to us in the manner that we would appreciate it being done. So it's really tough to just kind of figure out where does the biscuit meet the basket here at some point. Where do we make progress on all sides? And it's interesting to see that this Vanguard project is something that's going to support these people that have zero support, and hopefully moving forward there's less unknown for all three sides of what we're trying to find out here, from the whistleblowers that have this information and want to put it out there, from the people in government agencies that have this information and don't want it, to the general public who are dying for some type of explanation for everything that's been going on around them.
Starve for the truth. I mean, that's the line straight from Disclosure Day. There is a lot of belief of that you look at the popularity of this file drop website, and 1.7 million people, that sort of thing. That's a lot of people. But yeah, they're starved for the truth. But you raise a good point. How do we get to any sort of balance about this? Is that even possible? If you've got, like Dylan's talking about Michael Sullivan, or I think it's Michael Sullivan. He was going to come forward and talk about, we don't know what he was going to talk about, and then he passes away with a suicide note, conveniently enough. And I know the FBI is looking into that, and I'm not speculating on that sort of thing, but he did leave a wife and some little kids behind. Is that, you take that, all these scientists who've disappeared, some of them, they found at least one, What's really going on with that whole thing? How far are these guys willing to go to keep this a secret, and why? At this point in this day and age, why are we still so dead set against keeping the secret, other than the three factors that we've talked about numerous times on this show: money, power, and control? All of them are impacted by this grand secret. Let me play part 2 of this sort of thing, and so you can hear a little bit more of what Dylan had to say, and then I'll talk about a little something that he said that I don't have, that because I just like I'm not gonna put this whole damn thing up here. So come here we go. Okay.
If you're a real whistleblower, how can we bring you forward? How we can give you to Dave? How can we give you to Burleson? I can, in good faith, tell them, stick your neck out right now, because I know what all of us have faced. And that's the problem. That's why we're standing up this org. This shouldn't exist, but it's the situation. We care about everybody, and that's where we're at.
Is especially with the baggage here. The Senate, God bless the staff on SSCI, but Gillibrand and Rubio were supposed to be doing this as well, taking in whistleblower testimony and protecting them. And they completely failed at their directive, and in turn got many people exposed and hurt. And so after that sort of baggage from 2017 to 2023, it's difficult to also encourage people to come forward after how many people got hurt and kind of left in the dust there.
But I guess I see what you're saying, Dylan, is more or less like the big truth can come out. Like the big question of we're not alone can be answered, right? And that's not violating any national security issues. That's not really putting anybody in a weird, uncomfortable position. But does that open the floodgates? Once you pull that thread, doesn't the whole sweater come unraveled?
I mean, I've done a very careful job of what I've said publicly, especially with weaponized. And again, I didn't even want to be public. After the ICIG, I went back to work. The only reason you guys know about me is because I lost my job. Had I never lost my job, you guys wouldn't know about me unless you guys were connected in back rooms. Almost every religion throughout history believes in some type of other entity that has interacted with us. Call them aliens, call them angels, demons, it doesn't matter. 7 billion people on Earth pretty much have a religion that believes in some type of other sentient life. My point is that the fact that you will not confirm that we have confirmation, we as modern humanity are not the only ones who accomplish what we've accomplished, and others have accomplished more, is such a mind screw that where my mind goes as an intelligence analyst is, well, why won't you say it? Now, you kept the floodgates closed. You talk about opening the kimono. You can literally still say that and still keep the kimono closed. They kept the kimono closed on even saying we're not alone for all these years. Mm-hmm. So my point is why not say it? It's an honest question. Why not say we're not alone? Why has China, Russia, Israel, Five Eye, why has everybody kept their mouth shut? It's an interesting question.
That's a great question. It's my question. Why wouldn't another mover, another player on the board make a first move? Why not China? Why not the Vatican? Vatican could make a statement. They have some of the best astronomers in the world working for the Vatican.
To be fair, you're talking to a devout Catholic, so I'm going to tiptoe this one, gentlemen. But I've been clear. I've never said extraterrestrial intelligence exists. I've never seen proof of extraterrestrial intelligence. But what I would say to you is Catholic priests and bishops and cardinals within the history of Catholicism have been clear we're not alone. By definition, at the end of Catholic Mass, we say a prayer to St. Michael the Archangel, defend us in battle, protect us from the snares of the devil. That is not a demon. That is an archangel. By definition, is a non-human intelligence. So I get what you're saying, but this is my irony when you have Christians go and say it's all demonic. By your very definition of a religion, if you understand Christian history, you already believe in NHI that aren't demonic. So again, you're getting into one of the things I've been pressing, not only is the crimes committed against whistleblowers, it's the PSYOP being spun on the public, which is people are being fed BS to convince themselves of what they heard without looking at the information. And you're fighting an uphill battle against Mockingbird, Northwoods, the CIA, ODNI, international community, big business, banks, Lockheed Martins. You're fighting everything at one time. And that's where you're at.
So I think like the big loaded question there is something we kind of talked about and touched on, Tony, a little bit was, why is nobody talking about this? Why has nobody else come forward? Why hasn't any of these other nations? And I see I've lost my visual effects, but that's okay. Yeah, it lasted an hour and a half this time. That's pretty good. But yeah, why is nobody else talking about this stuff? Why is everybody kept their mouth shut? Why won't anybody, like, you would think there'd be a strategic advantage for one of these other nations like China, like Russia, to come out and say, hey, here's what we've got. The fact that nobody will admit, A, we're not alone, and that B, no one else is coming forward and saying anything else about it really is an interesting thing. And it ties into something that Nick mentioned while that was playing there that we're going to touch in a little bit on, which I don't have the video for that. But one of the things Dylan said was that, there's a big belief, of course, some people think whatever we're dealing with, this phenomenon, this NHI, is benevolent. They're here to help humanity and all that sort of stuff. There's the other side of the coin that doesn't buy into that. And like Dylan was saying that, we need to be prepared. We need to prep for battle, get the battlefield ready. These beings, and maybe that's why everybody's keeping their mouth shut, because they realize there's a fight coming. We don't want to talk about it until we absolutely have to tell people it is time to take up arms and get ready, because this is what's happening. I don't know if that's the indication, but it is very interesting that, you look at what's going on in the world today and nobody can get along. We've got Iran fighting with the United States, Israel fighting with Lebanon, China thinking about going into Taiwan. All the world is like is it as bad as in Disclosure Day where we're right on the precipice? No, but it's not that far off. And the fact that you've got all this stuff happening with the world, with the nations of the world, and that nobody's talking about this. Why is it? And I know the skeptics and the debunkers will say because there's all bullshit. That's why no one's talking about it. And it's like, because they don't want to sound like a bunch of blithering idiots. But I don't think that's accurate at all. But, you look at the United States is delivering these documents, 3 file drops now. Brazil did something, but, you don't hear anything from Russia or China. Now, my theory on that is like, you're not going to hear anything from Russia and China because of that control element of the 3 factors we talked about. If you admit that, you admit you're not in control. And when you're talking about a totalitarian regime or communism or whatever's in China, you're not going to admit that, because then the people realize, oh, you guys really aren't in control of this whole thing. Now, the United States is a little bit different. You have more flexibility. But yeah, you're not going to get that from China, and you're not going to get that from Russia. And you're probably not going to get that from Israel, because they've got an agreement with us, and it's like, don't say shit yet. So I get it and that sort of thing. But I wanted to turn to you on those points about, why is nobody saying anything? And are too many people thinking this is going to be ET, and it might actually be Independence Day?
I don't know why nobody's saying anything. Control is probably a big factor. Fear of losing that control is probably, when you talk about control, not maintaining it, but just completely losing it. You talk about these governments that are more communist and, more already controlling over their populations, i.e. Russia and China. They have no reason whatsoever to do that, besides getting one up on countries that they have animosity or, problems with. As far as the United States, I think they're just buying time to fully flesh and figure this thing out. I don't think anybody really has an entirely solid grasp on the information that's gathered and not being given out, right? And that's what's going to happen when you don't let a large amount of the people speculate, kind of investigate on their own terms too. So I don't know. That's a great question. That's the $64,000 question, right?
It really is, because that is the main thing. It's like, if there is something to this, why is nobody doing it? But I think like we just identified, in a country like China or Russia, where, yeah, there'd be motivation. I want to get one up on the United States. I want to make them look bad. But at the same time, you balance that against the loss of control by admitting to your populace, we're not really in control of this situation. We kind of are, but we're really not. And, when you're balancing all that stuff out, these guys are probably like, you know what? It's not worth it. Let's keep reverse engineering this until we can basically come out and say, we've cracked the code. You guys need to step in line or we're going to take you out. That sort of thing. I don't know. But it is, like you said, that is the 64,000 or million if you're applying inflation sort of situation here. So it's a really good point, though, man. And I don't, I wish I had the answers to that, because that seems to be like the big thing that everybody wants to know is like, well, yeah, what the hell is really going on with that whole thing, and why isn't anybody talking about it? But the whole thing was a fascinating conversation, and you got Dylan talking about all these things that are going on and that sort of information. And I don't know, man, the whole thing is just fascinating. Everything that's happening right now, there's so many moving parts to all this, right? And it's hard to keep it all compartmentalized, which is part of the problem with the United States government. I did mention earlier that I want to talk about David Grusch, because Grusch came back and he did a segment with Fox News, and I am going to show that here because and this actually came from Representative Eric Burleson's account, but Dave gives a lot more information on a lot of things he kind of mentioned on the Capitol steps, and he kind of dips his toe a little bit into specifically what he's seen and been exposed to. And that's like, okay, the first time he's really kind of said, here's exactly what I've seen. This is a fascinating thing to listen to. It's a little bit on the long side, but we're going to take a look at this thing because it's another one that's important. And I'm actually prepared again. I'm getting better, Tony. I mean, sort of, sometimes, every once in a while.
Tonight's big close-up is UAP whistleblower and former Air Force intelligence officer David Grusch. David, I'm bought into this. I watched The Age of Disclosure. I can't wait to watch Disclosure Day on Monday. I'm going to go see it by myself. I am that into it, okay? I know that you are a whistleblower on this, and you're very passionate about this, and for good reason. My question is, these files that are being dropped, how confident are you that this administration is going to give us all the information maybe that you're privy to or that you suspect? Do you think we're going to get the real answers on the UAP, UFO, alien activity?
Yeah, thanks, Tommy. I believe the presser we did earlier this week was helping drive that impetus so the administration does release those files. I know Mr. Stephen Miller is very serious about getting to the bottom of this for the president, and certainly the president was briefed on a lot of these matters his first term as well. So certainly seeing good signs. Very interesting files that were released the other day through the third drop. But it's really up to the administration and the cabinet to release a lot of the information I was exposed to. They have the keys to the car, so to speak.
David, Lisa Booth here. A lot of times these sightings end up having ordinary explanations. Tell us about some that you've seen that defy the ordinary.
Yeah, certainly some of them are ordinary, and some of them end up being, foreign programs and our own blue programs. Seen a lot of different interesting anomalous videos where we had, orbs cooler than background temperature moving at 400 knots, things like that. Certainly, like I said in my presser on Tuesday, I did get access to crash retrieval photos and everything, so I've seen the recovered vehicles and everything. So I would say that's probably the most stupendous thing, earth-shattering thing that changed my worldview when I got access to some of that years ago. And I do hope the administration, and I think they will, release that information in a further drop.
David, I gotta just jump in real quick there and give you a chance to talk about these crash site vehicles, because you got the hair on my wrist standing up. Just real quickly, I don't want to filibuster Joey here, but I'm very into this.
You got it.
Tell me about these crash sites that you've seen personally.
Yeah, a lot of them looked like what we saw. Some of the reporting dropped on Friday. There was a 1948 memo from the Chief of Naval Operations that discussed the flying disc pandemic that they were having, and they were enlisting help of the Air Force Intelligence Service. A lot of it was lenticular discs. Some was crescent moon shaped. I call it the flattened sunfish. There's a bunch of different morphologies that the U.S. government has recovered, from eggs to discs to crescent moon, boomerang type vehicles, and I got a small smattering sample of that of ones that have landed or crashed on the surface of the Earth.
David, I hate to bring us back down the ground here, but this is it's another kind of a tangent to this issue that I think that Americans maybe aren't as surprised by. But I want to ask you about recent allegations you've made accusing intel agencies of hiding billions of dollars in secret government spending from Congress. I mean, we know about Air America. CIA has done stuff like that, even Iran-Contra. Yep. So we've seen this happen before. It's not, it's not aliens. It's what our government does. But tell us what you know about that.
Yeah, certainly. Earlier in my career, I was a counter-threat finance analyst. I actually worked in a special cell looking at arms trafficking and terrorist funding. So I have that background in counter-finance. And what I found was there were haircuts taken to classified black programs to fund this. There was also self-funding cutout companies, if you're familiar, and you mentioned Iran-Contra, and they had cutout companies self-funding some of the arms purchases for the Contras, but also criminal enterprises, unfortunately, is kind of the third way I saw laundering money. And I actually bumped into a very serious criminal enterprise, and all that information was actually reported to Department of Justice, and it led to some federal investigations and things I can't mention now, but the DOJ is actually handling that now because I bumped into a government-run criminal enterprise that was siphoning money for this topic as well to pay for kind of the crash retrieval operations off books.
David, I feel like to some of the skeptics out there, you just talked about an example dating back to the 1940s. Yeah. There's been evidence or allegations for decades. And the cynics or the skeptics might say, if there's truly some big conspiracy here to hide all this from us, that's now involving so many people to keep these secrets and keep the conspiracy going. Is that really plausible or realistic? How do you address that question that people might ask?
Yeah, at any given time, there's probably several thousand people briefed. And then remember, it's an onion model. So people at the top, you're looking at less than 200 that really know a lot of this information. As somebody who was originally ultra cleared, I was cleared to the entire black budget of the Department of Defense at one point. We do keep a lot of secrets as America, and there are multi-decade thousands of people briefed to certain sensitive activities we do around the world, and it's never leaked. And conversely, actually, the subject at some level has been leaking since almost its inception, because you had qualified observers seeing this phenomena, and then you did have information about crash retrievals and other things like, historical events that have been documented, like Virginia in Brazil in '96. Which the Brazilian defense minister recently in a statement confirmed that event actually happens. And if you watch an episode of American Alchemy with Jesse Michaels, you can actually watch the interview. So the government is very good at keeping secrets, but at the same time, this subject actually has been leaking at some level as well. But we have techniques and procedures to keep the lid on a lot of sensitive things, believe it or not.
David, just real quickly, are you fearing for your life at all, or blowback? I know that you've been very outspoken, but after watching a lot of documentaries on this, there are a lot of whistleblowers that speak of the things that you're speaking of. Is there a price that you pay for that?
Yeah, there was a severe price. And certainly my wife and I witnessed a lot of things in our personal life to send me a message when I was, at NGA and still an intelligence officer. The administrative terrorism was immense. And like I mentioned in my presser, even the Air Force A2 or the Intelligence Directorate, tried to get an Espionage Act, unauthorized disclosure investigation on me when I went public in 2023 and testified in front of the House Oversight Committee. And certainly recently, my good Air Force friend, Matthew, callsign Quake Sullivan, did pass away mysteriously before he was willing to come to the Hill to testify about his knowledge of these activities. And Quake was a Bronze Star recipient and an Air Force officer, intel officer friend of mine that I served with. And, he was one of my, sources in my investigation. And, he passed away mysteriously. And that is an ongoing FBI matter. So I won't characterize it. And I'm open to, different conclusions of what happened. But just, to your point, there's been a lot of anomalous things that have happened to people. I've had anomalous health incidents happen to people that were helping me in my investigation, Havana syndrome, if you will. And now that the government is finally admitting that that issue is real, that issue sort of parallels this issue. They deny until all of a sudden, just kidding, we know it's real. So I've been at fear for my life in the past.
Well, David, I really appreciate it. Like I said, I am totally bought into this, and I appreciate you coming forward and spending the time with us tonight. You're going to kick off a very intriguing discussion, so I hope you will stay on.
I like the gal from Fox News trying to convince us how into the topic she is, right? I mean, that was
as great of an actress as Courtney Grace was on Disclosure Day. Stick to reporting. Stop acting.
Yeah. Government-sponsored criminal organization. That's a pretty big statement there that he discovered in millions. I mean, is it surprising? Not really. That sort of thing. Grusch talking about what he's seen, the crash retrievals. I thought it was really interesting. Like the one guy asked a great question: how have we kept this thing quiet for all these years? And I think Dave had a really good response to that, saying, there are secrets that you can keep, some secrets, that, I mean, we see it in WWE. You think nothing can be kept secret on the internet anymore, but you can. And this, of course, is a lot different story. But what do you think of what you heard from Grusch there, Tony?
I don't think it's anything particularly surprising, right? But at the same time, he's reconfirming a lot of the speculation that we're having. Is it a shock that the government secretly funnels money so that the public isn't aware of it? Boy, sounds like the beginning of time or the beginning of actual governments and democracies to me. Some would say that a government in and of itself is crooked and criminally unjust majority of the time as well. So nothing surprising or shocking, but yeah, you just continue to ask the question that why is there no repercussions, or there's less transparency than you'd like to be available is basically the end topic, right?
Right. And this is all the search for that transparency. And David's at the forefront of this, and he's done a lot for it. And he is held up on a different pedestal by most of the UFO community for good reasons. Of course, it's that time of day where we get the dogs involved.
But to Mike Brown from the New York Knicks, head coach, and his favorite phrase lately, "Who let the dogs out?"
That's right. Who let the dogs out? Man. Anyway, let's move into the last thing I want to talk about, other than the review of the documentary. This past week, as all this stuff is going on and circulating, the government does something kind of interesting, as they come in and they create these two boards: a scientific advisory board, and then there's the governing board. And I'm not really sure what to make of what they're doing with this and why. The scientific advisory board is headed up by Professor Avi Loeb. Now, you're going to recognize that name, Tunney, from the stuff we did with 3i Atlas. All that stuff we were covering with 3i Atlas. Avi Loeb was one of the guys who was front and center saying, hey, we need to look at this in further detail. People have tried to attribute to Avi Loeb the fact that he said these are aliens. These are all aliens. It's an alien spaceship coming to get us. And we have talked about it numerous times on here. He never said that. He said we should look into this in more detail and consider the fact that maybe there's something else going on with this thing. But he never flat out came out and said, yeah, these are aliens. It's an alien ship or something like that. So he's very familiar to you. But I want to I'm going to look at here. I want to pull up the, so this is Dr. Loeb's article that he's got on here, which talks about the group that they put together. UAP Science Advisory Council. Now, there is a governing board as well that we really don't know too much about because not a whole lot of details has been done. But here, let's look at this. Dr. Loeb, we're talking about, so there's a set of questions asked about his new leadership position. And, they talk about, I think the big thing that came out of this, Tony, was what is the purpose? And Andy McGrillen from that UFO podcast just released an episode this morning where he interviews Avi. I've only listened to some of it, not all of it. I want to see what else he has to say. Although his take on kind of amnesty for people, I think, is a little myopic. And I think you should have like a sliding scale for amnesty and look at the nature of the crime that's done before we just give these guys blanket immunity forever, that sort of thing. But sorry, go ahead, man.
No, and that's kind of the point I brought up, like just to start this entire show today, was where you draw the line at giving whistleblowers exemptions from being punished, anonymity, whatever you want to say, you know, because at some point it's going to leak into other things that we just can't have, you know, outside of the UAP thing. Like some stuff needs to be kept away and kept private and for the good of nations and people in that nature, right? Wouldn't you agree?
I think well, if it really
scale of
right.
you know,
right, if it really is national security, you know, if that's really national security, then I think you have an interest in that, sure. But at the other extreme, it's difficult for me to, and I'll put this out to you to see what you think. Is the admission that we're not alone in the universe, does that really impact national security?
I think people who are bright enough to decipher information, whether it's valid or misinformation, a large majority of however many people you want to say are on this planet already know that in their hearts. Sure. A lot of them aren't willing to admit it.
Right. And that's the point, is like, okay, if you're going to admit something that 65% roughly, I think that's the last statistics I've seen, like 65% of the population thinks that there's life out there. You know, now from the standpoint, that part I think you could admit and not breach national security. You know, are they walking amongst us? Have they infiltrated the government? Now that's a different story. You know, that's the kind of stuff where you start to get into that gray area where are we dealing with something that is national security based, because this suggests that, hey, we have no control over this. We don't. It's like, you know, scrolls. Are they all scrolls in here? You know, or have these guys shapeshifted their way into the presidency and we don't know?
The end of Invincible. We're going to be here among you.
And that's why I played that when on one of the episodes of Unidentified History, the end of Invincible, where he gives Mark that choice. It says, we will blend amongst you. We will hybridize. We will repopulate. You won't
say anything or we'll destroy your entire planet. So maybe there's your answer, right? We've already been contacted at the highest level and been instructed on how to move forward, right?
And that's exactly what I...
Am I saying that's what I personally believe? That's not what I'm saying. But it's a very strong hypothesis and way to connect the dots. Fa la 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 la.
It is very possible that we were presented as a nation or even as a planet. You want to know why people keep their mouths shut? Because of this. They were presented with this choice. Keep your fucking mouth shut. Let us do what we want. You guys will benefit from this as well. You know, we're going to hybridize. We're going to do this sort of stuff. Keep your mouth shut. Because if you don't, we will destroy the entire planet. And it may be as simple and terrifying as that. Don't know.
Maybe the entire nation of North Korea is just an alien race that's just working on. I mean, it's the least we know about our planet besides the oceans, right?
But it is a very valid. I mean, when you start looking for reasons why have we kept our mouth shut? What if we were given an impossible choice like Mark was?
Sure. Yeah.
Getting back to the Scientific Advisory Council and looking at what we've got here, some of the names on here are familiar. Some are problematic. Professor Carol Cleland, anomaly identification. Dr. Richard Clote, data analysis and AI tools. So you can kind of see where they're going with this. Dr. Omar El-Dadi, data management, AI, and human psychology. Dr. Tim Gallaudet, who we all know from oceanography. Professor Robin Hanson, statistics and economics. Ross Howard, communication. Dr. Kevin Knuth, physics and instrumentation. Ben Lamb, oceanography and biology. Dr. Devish Nandel, numerical analysis and astrophysics. Professor Gary Nolan, molecular biology and material science. Dr. Michael Shermer, who's noted as being the study of anomalies, which is a fucking joke. We'll talk about that in a minute. Dr. Peter Skafish, anthropology. Professor Matthew Sedegas, instrumentation and data collection. And Dr. Janice Villaire, quantitative psychology. Now, when you look at that list and who they've got on the panel, it sure sounds like they're looking for something, right? I mean, you look at that, it's like they are trying to identify something, and they've got, you're talking about biologists, oceanographers. You've even got some economists, statisticians, psychologists. So they're looking at this. It seems like, and I don't know, but it's like, okay, are they trying to retcon what they've already found by using these scientists to say, here is indisputable proof that we are not alone. Here's what we found. Shermer's a problem because he is a known debunker, not skeptic, flat out debunker, and he's an asshole on top of that. So a lot of us had a lot of concerns with, why is he on this panel, that sort of thing. But there are some solid people on this panel. Dr. Kevin Knuth, who is somebody we know about. Tim Gallaudet, I saw him speak at Contact in the Desert. He testified before Congress at the same time that Lou Elizondo did. Professor Gary Nolan, molecular biology. He's primarily, a lot of people know him from the UFO community, but he's a cancer researcher. You've got Peter Skafish as far as anthropology, Matthew Sedegas, instrumentation data. So you've got a lot of guys who are collecting data. You've got a lot of people who are bringing in AI. You've got biologists. You've got oceanographers. This feels like they are looking for something. Am I wrong on this, or how are you looking at this thing?
No, it's putting together a team that is going to be well equipped to handle any aspect of what you're trying to get into, and then the fact that you got Shermer there too says that at the end of the day, we didn't just all bring in people that like-mindedness, we provided counters and checks and balances upon our research as well.
And don't get me wrong, I think it's very important, critically important, to have skeptics on this panel. You got to keep this even. This is not just about having a bunch of believers out there saying, because that's not going to help the situation. If you're really trying to prove that this life exists and you're trying to approach it scientifically, and my issues with whatever Avi's saying about, amnesty for all and that sort of thing, we can talk about that. But they sure look like they are putting together a team that is designed to try and identify and categorize whatever they found. Now, the other alternative is the alternative may be that the government has put this crackpot team together, not crackpot, I don't mean it by that, but this really stellar team of people together to sit there and say they couldn't find anything. That just proves that it's all bullshit. Maybe that's going on as well. But last thing I want to play before as we're getting ready to cut out of here, is I did go to Avi Loeb's X page, and I want to share this because there's an interesting sort of, I think he was asked about this board, and if I can find it, here we go. Hold on a sec. So one of these podcasters asked him a very interesting question. I'm going to share this because I think it is relevant. Okay, here we go.
Now, Dr. Loeb, come on, Neil asks, and this is a very relevant question because I guarantee everybody's asking this one. If you discover aliens in the investigation, will you tell us?
Of course.
And who would you report to first? And would it depend on, would it depend on them to allow disclosure, which I would assume would be the U.S. president?
Right. Well, as I mentioned, our consul will only deal with unclassified information. We will analyze it. We will recommend better technique to get to the bottom of this mystery. And that means recommending sensors, AI algorithms for analyzing the data, or we might do analysis that already gives us some hints about the nature of the object. And, that's the way science is done. It's a learning experience. It takes time. And at the end, if we end up concluding that we observed something that is definitely not human-made, I think that information should be shared with the public. There is no reason to hide it because we are all in the same boat. And just imagine, it's very analogous to a family living at home and thinking, having no clue whether they have neighbors down the street. And then you go out to the backyard and you notice a tennis ball that was thrown by a neighbor. And then the question is, are you supposed to hide this fact from your family members that are gathered at the dinner table? My answer is no, because one day this neighbor will show up at the front door. And so it's better to adapt to the reality, whatever it means. And the Vatican made a big mistake when it put Galileo Galilei in house arrest. It wanted to suppress the message that the Earth is not at the center of the universe. But in fact, the Earth was moving around the sun 4.5 billion times before the Vatican even existed. So the fact that it was popular within the Vatican to assume that the sun moves around the Earth did not change the fact, that the Earth moves around the sun. So, 350 years after Galileo died, they admitted in 1992 that he was right because they had no choice. There was so much data, for example, from spacecraft looking at the Earth moving around the sun. I mean, it would have been foolish for them to continue to insist on the other view. So the way that science arrives eventually at the truth is by collecting enough data so that it would be foolish for anyone to argue otherwise. And we need to get to that point with respect to UAP. Now, I don't know as of now what their nature is. It's still possible that they are human-made. We haven't seen evidence beyond any doubt, and that's why many people are still in doubt. But by collecting more evidence, we can either, at the very least, if you have a down-to-earth view, at the very least, we will help national security if these are human-made objects, because we are helping the Pentagon fulfill its mission. But this is the minimum expectation. And if we find evidence for non-human made technology, obviously everyone on Earth should be aware of that.
So
hold on, I can't help myself. Very interesting.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, he's an interesting guy. I guess the question I want to pose to you is, can they get these answers using only unclassified documents? Because I have a lot of doubts that they, it's like how are you going to prove this just based on what's already out there? Because it's pretty clear that they don't have access to classified information and they have no real power, and that's a problem. Can they accomplish this with just the information that's already available?
I don't know. I have no
dynamite drop in there, Monty.
But I mean, like, honestly, I have no fucking clue. If you get enough brilliant people to go through all of this information with a fine-tooth comb, I believe it's possible, right? But I can't say for certain. I consider myself, not a stupid person, but I'm not brilliant in any aspect of some cosmic level. I have a few different things that I know just enough to be considered dangerous about. And we talk about a lot of that stupid shit on Chairshot Radio Network. But I'm interested to see what the experts, what the people who have dedicated their lives to science. And when you talk about science, it's about facts. It's not about guessing. It's not about drawing conclusions. It's about providing factual data and coming up with a perspective from that solid evidence.
Right. And I think, like, you bring up a good point with that team that he's put together. If there's something there to be gleaned from these documents that may have been missed, they're going to find it, especially if they're using like AI, incorporating all this stuff into it. And if they do find it, then you get some of these other people who are involved, the economists, the psychologists, anthropologists, to say, hey, if we're going to actually make this official disclosure, even if it's something as simple as, hey, we're not alone, then they need to have the right people in place to do that. And maybe that's what's going on. But there could be the alternative that this is all a whitewash and another way for the government to come back and say, see, we told you there's nothing to any of this shit. Well, then why are you guys keep pumping out all these files if there's nothing? What a lot of mixed signals and a lot of mixed messages. All right. Last thing I'm going to say, and then we're going to get out of here, Tunney, because we've been on for a while now. I did say on the last episode that I was going to watch this documentary called The Experiencers Full Disclosure by Dean Aliotto. I did get a chance to watch that. It is excellent. I highly recommend that you guys watch that, especially if you like Disclosure Day. If you like Disclosure Day and the experiencer aspect of that, this documentary is all about the experiencers. And there's some really cool stuff. There's some familiar names. There's Terry Lovelace's situation and they talk a lot about the implants that he had implanted in his leg, and then they kind of came out and doctors saying maybe that was an upgrade. There's some stuff about Betty and Barney Hill on there, which of course is the most famous of the abduction cases and that sort of thing. And there's just there's like these two sisters who shared this dream, which kind of ties into Disclosure Day, right? These two kids who kind of share this experience, with these two sisters share this dream, and they kind of both go under hypnosis. And look, I'm not sitting here and extolling the virtues of hypnosis and saying, oh yeah, there's no problems at all with hypnosis, because we know regression therapy has its issues. You can implant memories and that sort of thing. But just kind of, I think the subject of the experiencer, and I love the fact that Dean, who did he did the Alien Perspective volumes 1 and 2 not that long ago, which were really good as well. Dean, who I saw speak at Contact on a couple panels, did a fantastic job of this. And I love the fact that he did focus on the experiencers, because whether you believe them or whether you think they're completely full of shit or batshit crazy, they should not be marginalized. They should not have their feelings and their experience, whatever it is, just shit upon. And you see that happen even amongst the community itself, even amongst us who believe, we believe up to a point, you know what I mean? Where it's like, I'll believe in the ships and I'll believe that there's something flying around and 6 observables, but I don't want to believe that these things are abducting us and taking us and doing all sorts of things. Or, that'd be cool. If somebody wants to take me and give me sort of like the ability to communicate in the language of math, take me. That's fine. I'm cool with that. But I love the fact that they did a big focus on the experiencers, because they are a kind of sometimes too often forgotten group of people in this whole conversation. And Dean did a fantastic job with this documentary. Highly recommend checking this out for anybody who's watching it. I got some other ones I'm going to watch that I'll review on a future episode, but that is going to do it for today, Tony. Man, I appreciate you coming in here and staying with me this whole time and covering a lot of ground on this episode. Like you said, we've got an episode of Game Gone Wrong, which is going to drop later on today. Our recap of seasons 1 and 2 of House of the Dragon as we get ready for season 3. I did want to shout out, man, Nick. I don't know if you're still on here watching this. If you are, thank you for sticking with us
Thanks
this
for
whole
hanging out
time,
with us.
man. Yeah, exactly,
There's other
man.
people that have been watching this and following along with us. Like, feel free to drop a line in the chat. We might not get to your thought instantly, but we're going to at least acknowledge you coming on and checking us out. So thank you to everybody that checks out everything here at Attitude of Aggression and at the Chair Shot.
At least until we get 200 people in the chat and we need moderators.
We gotta,
I nominate Patrick O'Dowd for that job.
Uh-oh,
Yeah, that'll work. Yeah, right.
Okay.
But we've got House of the Dragon coming up. We're going to go back to Big 5 project. We got to go to WrestleMania 13. We got to figure out when we're going to get all that stuff wedged in there. And man, I'm really hoping. I think things will calm down a little bit. Maybe not calm down, but we're going to get to the point where we can do like an real episode of Unidentified History. We can touch on some news items and then do one of our deep dives, because we still got to cover Antarctica. My wife's on me about that. And then after Antarctica, we are going to do the Roswell episode, which is obviously very topical based on what we just saw on Disclosure Day. But Tony, before we let you out of here, let people know where can they check you out and all the stuff going on over at thechairshot.com, man.
You can follow me on almost all popular streaming platforms right there at PC Tunney. If you want to get a hold of me, X is a great way to do it, or PC Tunney at thechairshot.com. Yeah, thechairshot.com is rejuvenated, revitalized, and better than ever. A big thanks to a lot of the work that Ray Cash has put in with the help of Greg DeMarco, Andrew Belads, and myself. We're the 4 guys just trying to keep this creative machine moving. We got a brand new sports show debuting this week, PC Sports Podcast.
Yeah.
To go along with Four Corners, which Dave and Patrick do a great job as well. We got the Bandwagon, the Nerds, covering everything pop culture for you, and of course, tons of great wrestling content over there. So, and check out Trivia X. I got trivia for you every week, 10 multiple choice questions. It's a lot of fun, a different topic every week. We're on World Cup right now. I'll let you know this next week's topic is going to be the show Cheers. RIP, one of the Burroughs brothers passed, one of the creators has passed. I believe aged 85, but yeah, what an iconic American sitcom, as we're talking about 70s sitcoms tomorrow over on Chairshot. YouTube channels. So make sure you go and tune in tomorrow, 2 p.m. Eastern at Chairshot Media.
Yep, we're gonna our 70 sitcoms. I don't know, $6 Million Man. Can I wedge him in as a sitcom?
You
Probably
son
not.
of a bitch.
Probably can't pull that off. As far as for me, you can go and check me out. The best way is to go to the website, attitudeofaggression.com. It is right there for you guys. That's where all the episodes is. That's where all the historical documents are. The deep dives that we've done on some really cool events so far are all there. And of course, check out the Attitude of Aggression's YouTube channel, which I think has a link to it there for those of you watching somewhere. But that's going to do it for this episode of Unidentified History. A great conversation. We covered a lot of ground. Awesome stuff all the way around. But, as we say here on this show, do the research, study the history. Most importantly, make up your own mind, because that is what truly matters. We will catch you next time for the next installment of Unidentified History. We appreciate anybody who stuck in with there and watches with us. And we will catch you guys very, very soon.